What happened is that Shirley brought me to Hollywood to do Gambit, but her thing she was doing overran, and I was a week on my own in Hollywood.
At 92, Sir Michael Caine has nothing left to prove, yet everything he says still feels like a masterclass. The boy who once dreamed in the flickering lights of post-war London grew into one of cinema's last true gentlemen. He's played spies, killers, lovers, and kings. But ask him what truly shaped him, and he won't name a director or an award. He'll name 6 films, 6 stories that taught him what acting and life are really about. They're not blockbusters. They're lessons in courage, honesty, and humanity, carved into celluloid by the legends who came before him. From Brando's raw truth to Bogart's quiet grace. These are the movies that built Michael Caine. So, which of these timeless masterpieces still echo in the heart of a man who's spent 7 decades mastering the craft himself? The first film on Michael Caine's list is one that changed how the world understood acting. On the Waterfront, 1954. To him, Marlon Brando wasn't just great, he was revolutionary. Before Brando, Caine once said, heroes were polished. After him, they were human. Watching Brando's Terry Malloy stumble through guilt and redemption, Caine saw something he'd never seen before. Vulnerability turned into strength. It wasn't performance. It was truth. The line, "I could have been a contender," wasn't scripted emotion. It was a man's soul breaking open. That honesty, that refusal to hide behind technique, became the foundation of Caine's entire career. He learned that real power in acting doesn't come from showing emotion, but from fighting to contain it. That's why, decades later, even in his quietest moments, Alfie, the quiet American, educating Rita, you can still feel Brando's shadow, guiding him toward authenticity. But while On the Waterfront taught him the value of truth, the next film on his list reminded him of something equally vital, that charm, wit, and elegance could be just as powerful as raw emotion. Its name? Charade, for Michael Caine. Charade, 1963, was proof that cinema didn't always have to brood to be brilliant. Charm, he once said, is an art form, and Cary Grant was its greatest artist. Caine adored the film's balance of wit, suspense, and romance, the way it danced between tension and laughter without losing either. Watching Grant and Audrey Hepburn trade lines like seasoned musicians taught him another truth. Timing isn't just for jokes, it's for emotion. "You know what's wrong with you?" she teases. "What?" "Nothing." That single exchange, Caine said, was perfection. It showed how elegance could be effortless and intimacy could live in a smile. The movie also reminded him that great acting isn't about control, it's about flow, listening, reacting, trusting the rhythm. Charade's Parisian flair and its playful danger would later echo in Caine's own performances, from Alfie's sly humor to the Italian job's cool swagger. It was proof that sophistication could coexist with heart. But while Charade charmed him with laughter, the next film on his list pulled him into darkness, a story of deception, shadow, and moral ambiguity that defined post-war cinema. That film was The Third Man. When Michael Caine talks about The Third Man, 1949, his voice changes, softer, reverent, almost haunted. "It's the most atmospheric film ever made," he once said, set in the ruins of post-war Vienna. It showed him that tone could be as powerful as dialogue. The tilted camera angles, the ghostly zither music, the fog curling through broken streets, all of it felt alive, dangerous, and deeply human. But what truly captured him was Orson Welles as Harry Lime. Welles appears for barely 15 minutes, yet his presence dominates the film. That smirk in the shadows, that famous cuckoo clock speech, it was charm turned sinister. He showed me that restraint can be terrifying, Caine recalled. The film taught him that in acting, as in life, mystery is power, that what you hold back often says more than what you reveal. Its moral ambiguity, good men doing bad things, bad men with moments of grace, shaped how Caine approached every complex role that followed. But while The Third Man taught him about shadows and silence, the next film on his list illuminated something brighter, a story about sacrifice, love, and the courage to do what's right. That film was Casablanca, for Michael Caine. Casablanca, 1942, isn't just a movie, it's a compass for life. That was Bogart, he said simply, and it's my favorite film of all time. Watching Humphrey Bogart as Rick Blaine taught him that heroism doesn't always roar, sometimes it whispers. Rick was cynical, broken, yet noble, a man who chose sacrifice over desire. That final airport scene, bathed in fog, struck Caine like scripture. The problems of three little people don't amount to a hill of beans, Bogart says. And in that line, Caine heard what true manhood meant, strength wrapped in restraint. He admired how Bogart made understatement magnetic, how every pause, every cigarette drag, spoke louder than grand speeches. It was this quiet dignity that Caine carried into the Ipcress File and The Quiet American. Emotion doesn't have to shout, he'd later tell young actors. You just have to mean it. Spoo. But while Casablanca taught him the grace of selflessness, the next film on his list explored the darker side of the human soul, where greed, ambition, and desperation collide in the desert heat. That film was The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. When Michael Caine speaks about the treasure of the Sierra Madre, 1948, there's a kind of awe in his voice, the reverence of a student remembering his greatest teacher, John Huston. If God had a voice, Caine once said, it would be John Huston. What drew him to the film wasn't the gold, the bandits, or the desert. It was the moral truth buried beneath it all. The story of three men chasing fortune in the mountains of Mexico, only to be undone by greed, fascinated him. The gold didn't change them, Caine explained. It revealed them. That, to him, was the essence of acting, stripping away the mask until only truth remains. He admired Bogart's slow descent into madness, the way his paranoia unfolded like a storm you could feel, but never stop. The film's realism, sweat, dust, sunlight, felt raw, unvarnished, honest. It proved to Caine that authenticity would always outlast spectacle, but after so much grit and moral darkness, his final choice was something purer, the film that first opened his eyes to the magic of cinema itself. That timeless revelation came from The Maltese Falcon, for Michael Caine. The Maltese Falcon, 1941, wasn't just a movie. It was the spark that lit the fuse. That was the day I fell in love with cinema, he said. As a young man in post-war London, sitting in a dark theater, he watched Humphrey Bogart as Sam Spade, tough, dry-witted, and utterly magnetic, and something inside him shifted forever. Until then, films had been polite, romantic, clean. But John Huston's world was different. Smoky offices, rain-slicked streets, moral grayness. That's when I learned, Caine recalled, that movies could talk in darkness. Bogart didn't act like a movie star. He acted like a man who'd seen the world and carried its weight without complaint. His cool detachment, his weary humor, they became part of Caine's DNA. He would later channel that same quiet toughness in the Ipcress File, Get Carter, and even as Alfred in The Dark Knight. Bogart didn't pretend, Caine said. He just was. That became his creed. Truth over glamour. Stillness over show. Watching The Maltese Falcon was like watching himself. years before he existed. It didn't just make him an actor, it made him an observer of humanity. And even now, after 7 decades of storytelling, that boy in the dark still lives inside the legend. Because for Michael Caine, every film he made afterward was, in some way, a thank you to the movies that taught him how to see. Looking back across 9 decades, Sir Michael Caine's love affair with cinema feels less like a career and more like a lifelong conversation, one between truth and illusion, light and shadow. From Brando's wounded honesty in On the Waterfront to Bogart's quiet strength in Casablanca and The Maltese Falcon, each film didn't just entertain him, it educated him. They taught him that acting isn't about pretending, it's about being. That elegance and wit, like in Charade, can reveal just as much humanity as tragedy. That moral ambiguity, like in The Third Man, reflects life more truthfully than any simple hero's tale. And that ambition, as shown in The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, always comes with a price. Together, these films built the foundation of a man who would later embody all their lessons: sincerity, discipline, humor, and grace, even now, at 92. Caine still speaks of cinema as a teacher, a mirror, and a friend. "I've spent my life learning from movies," he once said, "and I'm still learning." His story isn't just about 6 favorite films. It's about how art shapes a soul, how one man found wisdom in the flicker of a projector. So the next time you watch a classic, remember, somewhere in the shadows of the theater, a young Michael Caine once sat, and from that darkness, a legend was born.